He had sent 7 emails over the course of 4 months. 7 emails, carefully written, each one shorter than the previous because he had learned, through the progressive shortening, that length was not the barrier. He had sent the first at 900 words, the full argument laid out, evidence cited, implications drawn. No response. He had sent the second at 600 words, the argument distilled. No response. The third at 400, the fourth at 200, which was the length at which you could say the essential thing and nothing more. No response. The fifth through 7th had been variations on the fourth, trying different entry points to the same essential argument, looking for the formulation that would produce a reply. None of them had. He was not naive about why. He was 31 years old and had been a data analyst at Meridian Financial Technologies for 2 years, and he understood with the clear-eyed accuracy of someone in his organizational position that CEOs of mid-size financial technology companies did not typically engage directly with the analyses of mid-level data analysts, no matter what those analyses showed. The pathway was supposed to go upward through management, to his director, who would assess it, and if the director found merit, to her VP, who would assess it further, and if the VP found merit, perhaps eventually to someone who sat near enough to the top to make the thing he had found matter. He had gone through the pathway. Twice. His director had told him on the first occasion that the finding was interesting, and that she would look into it. She had not looked into it. His director had told him on the second occasion that the company's risk models were managed by a dedicated team, and that his analysis, while thorough, was not within his area of operational responsibility. He had thought about this for 3 days. Then he had sent the first email directly to the CEO. His name was Thomas Reyes. He was not going to let the thing he had found simply stay found and unaddressed. What Thomas had found was a pattern in Meridian's client transaction data that the company's risk models were not capturing. He had found it the way most significant findings are found. Not through a systematic search but through a lateral noticing, the specific kind of peripheral attention that picks up something that was not what you were looking for because it doesn't fit the texture of everything around it. He had been building a routine reporting dashboard in November, pulling client transaction data across a 6-month window when he noticed that a small but consistent subset of high-value transactions were exhibiting a clustering behavior in their timing that was not random and was not explained by any of the standard client behavioral categories in the company's segmentation model. The clustering was subtle, not the kind of thing that would surface in a standard data pull or appear in any of the company's routine reporting. But Thomas had been looking at the raw data, not the summarized data, and he had the specific quality of attention, developed through 2 years of working with financial data and sharpened by an undergraduate degree in mathematics, that noticed when a distribution was not what it should be. He had spent 2 months examining the pattern before he brought it to his director. He had wanted to be sure. He had traced the clustering across 12 months of historical data, confirming that it was consistent and not an artifact of the 6-month window he had initially reviewed. He had cross-referenced it against 3 external data sources that the company subscribed to. He had built a model that predicted, with 73% confidence, which transaction cohort the anomaly would affect in any given month. 73% was not certainty. But in financial risk modeling, 73% predictive accuracy from a previously undetected pattern was not something you put in a file labeled interesting and looked into later. What the pattern appeared to indicate, and Thomas had been careful in how he phrased this, aware that he was a data analyst and not a fraud investigator and that the phrasing mattered, was that a subset of the company's high-value client transactions were being timed in coordination with external market events in ways that were not consistent with the stated investment strategies of the clients involved. He had used the word coordination deliberately. He had not used the other word. The other word was manipulation. The CEO's name was Victoria Chen. She was 44 years old, had been running Meridian Financial Technologies for 6 years, and had built the company's reputation specifically on the quality and integrity of its data infrastructure. The company's pitch to institutional clients rested on a single foundational claim, that Meridian's analytics were cleaner and more reliable than the industry standard. It was the company's core competitive advantage, and Victoria had spent 6 years protecting it with the vigilance of someone who understood that reputation in financial services is built slowly and destroyed quickly. She had not responded to 7 emails. She had not responded because her inbox received 430 emails per day, and her executive assistant had a filtering protocol that prioritized based on sender, subject line, and a set of keywords that had been developed over 18 months to approximate what Victoria actually needed to see versus what could be handled at a lower level. A data analyst's unsolicited analysis did not pass the filter. The emails had been read by the assistant, categorized as internal analytical submissions, and routed to the data science director's office with a note indicating that an analyst had attempted to escalate directly and that the director might want to follow up. The director had not followed up. Victoria had not known any of this. On the morning of the 8th month, 8 months after Thomas had first noticed the pattern, 4 months after he had first emailed Victoria, Meridian Financial Technologies received a regulatory inquiry. It arrived as a formal document from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, delivered to the company's general counsel's office at 9:15 a.m. It was a request for information related to a pattern of transaction timing that FINRA had identified in Meridian's client data during a routine audit. The inquiry named 3 specific client accounts. It was, in the careful language of regulatory communication, an information request, not an enforcement action. Yet, Victoria was in her office at 9:47 a.m. when her general counsel, a woman named Patricia Walsh, came in and closed the door. Patricia placed the inquiry on Victoria's desk. Victoria read it. She read it twice. Then she said, "How long has this pattern been in our data?" Patricia said, "We are going to need to find that out." Victoria said, "Get me our chief data officer." It was at 11:20 a.m. in the meeting that followed that the chief data officer mentioned, in the context of explaining what they knew and did not know about the flagged pattern, that a data analyst had submitted an internal analysis several months earlier that appeared to be related to the same pattern. Victoria looked at her CDO. "How many months ago?" she said. The CDO checked. 8 months ago, he said. Initial internal submission. 4 months ago, the analyst began attempting to escalate directly. 7 emails, all routed to the data science director's queue. Victoria was very still. "What is the analyst's name?" she said. "Tell us in the comments where in the world you are listening to this story from. If HeartLine Stories has moved you today, please like, subscribe, and share this channel. Every subscriber tells us to keep going. Now, back to the moment Thomas Reyes received a call from a number he did not recognize, from an office he had spent 4 months trying to reach. Thomas was at his desk when his phone rang. The number showed as an internal extension, but one he did not recognize. "Thomas Reyes," he said. "This is Victoria Chen," the voice said. "I am the CEO. I am calling because I understand you have been trying to reach me for 4 months." Thomas was quiet for 2 seconds. "Yes," he said. "I would like you to come to my office," she said. "Right now, if possible. Bring your analysis." "All of it?" he said. "Everything you have," she said. He was there in 4 minutes. He laid it out for her. Not the abbreviated version. The full version. The one he had prepared 8 months ago when he had first gone to his director and had since expanded with 8 additional months of data and 2 additional months of external cross-referencing. Victoria listened without interrupting. She asked 3 questions during the presentation. All 3 were precise and demonstrated that she understood more than the surface of what he was showing her. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You identified this 8 months ago," she said. "Yes." "And you have been tracking it since?" "Yes." I wanted to have as complete a picture as possible before the company acted on it. You did not know whether the company would act on it. He looked at her. No, he said. I did not know, but I thought the analysis should be as strong as possible regardless. Victoria looked at the document he had placed on her desk. The full analysis, 83 pages with appendices. She looked at him. The FINRA inquiry arrived this morning, she said. It describes the same pattern you are describing. It names 3 client accounts. Thomas said nothing. Your analysis identifies the same 3 accounts, she said, plus 4 others. Yes, Thomas said. You found more than they did. I have been working with the data for 8 months, he said simply. What followed was the most intense period of Victoria Chen's professional life. The company's response to the FINRA inquiry required full cooperation, complete transparency, and the production of an internal analysis that was both thorough enough to demonstrate good faith and accurate enough to be defensible. Thomas Reyes's 8 months of work became the analytical foundation of that response. He worked directly with Patricia Walsh's legal team and with the external counsel that was retained for the regulatory process, providing the data architecture and the analytical methodology that made the response coherent. It was demanding work. It was work that Thomas had not been trained for. Working with legal teams in a regulatory context is a specific skill that data analysts are not routinely taught, and he learned it as he went, with the specific adaptability of someone who has been tracking a complex pattern for 8 months and has developed, in that process, a comprehensive understanding of what the data actually showed. The regulatory process took 7 months. At the end of it, the 3 accounts identified in the FINRA inquiry had been closed. The 4 additional accounts Thomas had identified had been voluntarily disclosed and closed, and Meridian Financial Technologies had entered into a compliance agreement that required specific enhancements to its risk monitoring infrastructure. The company survived. Not easily, not without cost. The process was expensive and damaging to the company's reputation in ways that took time to repair. But it survived. Victoria's general assessment, shared with the board in the aftermath, was that the company's ability to respond as fully and proactively as it had, which had been critical to the regulatory outcome, rested entirely on the fact that a data analyst had noticed a pattern 8 months before FINRA did and had spent 8 months documenting it without being asked. She met with Thomas formally after the regulatory process concluded. Not to celebrate. The situation was not one that called for celebration. To be direct about what had happened and what it meant. You sent 7 emails, she said. Yes, he said. None of them reached me. I understood that by the 3rd or 4th, he said. I kept sending them because I did not know what else to do, and stopping seemed worse than continuing. Why did you keep working on the analysis after the emails stopped producing responses? He considered this. Because the pattern was real, he said. Whether or not anyone was going to do anything about it, the pattern was real, and I was the person who had found it. Stopping the analysis felt like pretending I had not found it. Victoria looked at him. I am going to make 2 changes, she said. The first is structural. A direct-to-CEO escalation pathway for risk-related findings that bypasses the standard filtering protocol. Analysts, not directors. If something is flagged as risk-related, it comes to me. And the second, Thomas said. Your role, she said. I would like you to lead the enhanced risk monitoring function that the compliance agreement requires us to build. It is a new team. You would be building it from the beginning. Thomas looked at her. I am a data analyst, he said. You were a data analyst, she said. 8 months ago you became something else. I was just the last person to notice. The risk monitoring function launched 6 months later. Thomas built it with the same quality of attention he had brought to 8 months of tracking a pattern nobody else had seen. Carefully, without rushing, choosing people for the specific combination of technical rigor and the willingness to ask questions that the work required. He instituted one rule on the team. Every anomaly gets documented, regardless of whether anyone above you has asked for it. If you see something, you write it down. The writing is the first obligation. What happens to it after is a different question. The team accepted the rule. They had been chosen, in part, because they already operated this way. If this story reminded you that the right thing to do and the heard thing to do are sometimes very different things, and that doing the right thing anyway matters, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have a story of your own, write to us at heartlinestories@gmail.com. Every heart has a story worth telling. This is HeartLine Stories, where yours matters.